The secret super bosses added to the Thousand Year Door remake are still definitely one of my favorite new additions, as you could probably tell from my boss ranking video or from the video where I beat Prince Mush as early as possible in the game. And, well, if I gave Prince Mush and even Bonetail that treatment, it only feels right to apply the same objective to Whacka. So, just how early in Thousand Year Door can we defeat the hidden Whacka boss? Just like Prince Mush and Bonetail, Whacka is insanely strong and rivals the potency of even the Shadow Queen herself. All three of these fights are meant to be done during the post-game, but as I've proven already, Prince Mush can be beaten before Chapter 5 and Bonetail can be beaten during Chapter 1. Prince Mush was pretty difficult and Bonetail was super difficult given how early in the game it was. I consider Whacka to be similar but slightly less strong than Prince Mush personally, but either way it should be a fun challenge to tackle. Just like with Prince Mush last time, there's a couple prerequisites for fighting Whacka that we have to get out of the way to figure out how early this fight is available. For starters, we're going to have to actually meet Whacka, otherwise the fight with him isn't going to become available later. This means that we have to start Chapter 5 since he vibes out in this little spot to the north of where you initially spawn on the island. Now just meeting him isn't enough to invoke his wrath and unlock his true power, so we're going to have to hit him. A lot. Slapping him just once won't do it. You've got to hit Whacka 8 times and collect those 8 Whacka bumps in order to get him to spawn later. After the 8th hit, he won't show up on Keelhaul Key anymore, seemingly indicating to the player that they killed Whacka, which is both hilarious and kinda f***ed up. Now you might think that this is leading up to me saying that we can beat Whacka during Chapter 5 at the earliest, but unfortunately that's not the case since we're actually stuck on Keelhaul Key after beginning Chapter 5. In the original game, you could access Keelhaul Key without starting Chapter 5 by using the fish glitch or hazard respawn glitch to open the blue pipe to Keelhaul Key, but the remake's new blue pipe room is intentionally much less susceptible to exploits, so we don't have anything like that in this version. Once we shipwreck on Keelhaul Key, the only way off the island is to play through the rest of the chapter, defeat Cortez, defeat Lord Crump, and then do the subsequent Peach and Bowser intermissions. So I'll just go ahead and do all of that real quick. It's pretty standard gameplay, so we'll just gloss over it. After returning to Rogueport, we're able to tackle the other prerequisite for fighting Whacka: clearing the Pit of 100 Trials. As you probably know or at least remember from my previous videos, Whacka is fought on floor 100 of the Pit of 100 Trials, but in order for him to spawn, Bonetail has to be cleared out first. So as part of fighting Whacka earlier than intended, we do also have to fight Bonetail earlier than intended. Luckily, this should not be nearly as much of a task as doing the pit during Chapter 1, since we have a lot more partners, a lot more badges, and really strong special moves in the form of Power Lift and Art Attack. Now, if you were smart, you'd hold up the Sapphire Star to the Thousand Year Door, grab the up arrow from Hooktail's castle, and then ultra rank some of your partners before tackling the Pit of 100 Trials. But unfortunately, I'm giving in to the idiot allegations, so I didn't do any of that. As soon as I got back from Keelhaul Key, I hopped straight into the Pit of 100 Trials and started grinding through. Since I'm not level 2 with only Koops and Goombella like I was during that Bonetail video, the first half of the pit was really nothing to write home about. The enemies finally start to be on level with Chapter 5 in the 40s, and since I just did that chapter, they're pretty tame in terms of threat level. I had been ignoring a lot of enemies on the save file like I'm prone to doing, so I was already getting a ton of star points even from these on-level enemies. The amount of star points you get when you're lower leveled actually makes the pit itself almost easier than it would be if you did it in the post-game. After Chapter 8, you really won't get a significant amount of star points until like the 70s or 80s floors, but even going into the 50s, I was already getting like 10 plus star points per fight. Bonetail is obviously still much easier with a post-game Mario, but during the trials themselves, you get a constant stream of free health and FP heals that make it easier to spam moves and soak up hits without much worry. Along the way, I did have a couple close calls because I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been, and I'm still getting used to some of these super guard timings in the remake, but I was able to keep it together and super guard when it was most important. My main takeaway from this particular pit run was actually just how overpowered Flurry's Gale Force is in the Pit of 100 Trials. I had always kind of known how strong it was, but it's often overshadowed by endgame levels of damage or just isn't available in early game pit runs. This, however, is the perfect sweet spot in the game's progression where spending 4 FP for a solid chance to blow away enemies is super worth it. A lot of floating enemies are programmed to have higher weaknesses to it, so a lot of the ridiculously strong enemies in the 90s are surprisingly easy to hit with the insta-kill move. For example, Elite Wizards, one of the strongest basic enemies in the whole game, have a 75% chance to be blown away. Now there are a couple things that affect these odds, but that's a whole other can of worms that's even less related to this video than the flurry stuff I've already brought up. For once, I actually encountered some Amazy Daisies, which seems to not really happen to me very often during challenge runs, and with a little bit of planning and execution, I was able to snag some kills on them. With a power bounce and multi-bonk, I'm able to kill them in one turn before they get a chance to attack or run away, but that does require hitting the frame-perfect 4th bounce on at least one of the attacks. So anyways, after grinding through all of these floors, it's time to take on Bonetail. With mid-game stats and access to power lift, it's not a very difficult fight. The breath attack pierces defense and can hit you with status effects, but after leveling up a bunch, Mario has plenty of health to soak up damage, not to mention the 8 Whacka bumps I have from absolutely rolling Whacka earlier. The power lift strategy is not the most interesting way to kill a boss, but it's a classic example of ain't broke, don't fix. In the remake, you can 100% consistently get +4 on attack and defense, which is even better than it was in the original, and keep in mind it was already broken in the original. It makes Bonetail's physical attacks lukewarm and makes my power bounces and multi-bonks quite spicy. She wasted some of my time with a couple heals, but didn't threaten me and went down pretty easily. So after grabbing return postage, we're able to head back up to Rogueport and we get to play a very similar game to the Prince Mush video. And that game would be waiting for an email. Just like with Mush, the Whacka fight will become available once you receive a certain email. In this case, we're looking for RDM Extra Issue, which states that a beast of some sort has been spotted on the 100th floor of the pit. Now, come to think of it, I'm not sure exactly who else went down there to be able to see this guy, but I could totally believe that Whacka himself would report his own sighting to this news outlet. I mean, based on Whacka's dialogue everywhere else in the game, he obviously likes to do a little bit of trolling. Or it's possible that he's trying to lure somebody down to the bottom of the pit, which would be the perfect place to kill somebody and have it be blamed on the rest of the monsters in the pit. Maybe he isn't a silly little guy, but actually a serial killer? YouTuber knows more about Whacka than he initially let on? Just like with Mush, it's kind of a gray area as to what actually triggers the internal timer for the email to send. When doing that video, I waited for hours and did not receive the email until I gave up and completed chapter 4, but several comments on that video stated that doing several battles would trigger it to happen earlier. In this case, since I had neglected to show the Sapphire Star to the Thousand Year Door yet, I was able to do that and immediately receive the email afterwards. It's possible that you could do several battles to get the email without showing the star, but it's still pre-chapter 6 either way, so I don't think it matters too much. After talking to Frankly and getting the email, you can also see that Merlin is standing outside of his house, which means we can now give him the up arrow and ultra rank our partners. And that will, of course, be very useful for fighting Whacka. We're also going to have to complete the Pit 100 trials itself again to get to Whacka, so having stronger partners will make it less tedious to do a second time. And something else that'll make it less tedious is the mover that spawns outside of the Pit 100 trials after completing it for the first time on a save file. For 300 coins, he lets you skip straight to floor 50, which is absolutely worth it since none of the fights before then, or even right after it to be honest, are difficult in the slightest on a second pit run. Adding this guy right here after you've beaten the pit once is probably one of my favorite changes in this remake. So let's hop back in and fight our way to floor 100 once again. With my higher stats and stronger partners this time around, I didn't even have any close calls, so we can gloss over things even faster. I had also forgotten to grab Spike Shield before my first run through, so having it this time made dealing with enemies like Dark Koopa Trolls especially much easier. I continued spamming Gale Force against flying enemies, and also found Shell Slam to be a really good bang for the buck option at this stage in the game. With 2 Power Plus Ps and fully ranked Koops, it deals 8 defense piercing damage to every enemy, which can take out a Chain Chomp or even a dark bristle in a single hit. My super guards also started to get noticeably better on my second run through in this play session, so that's always nice. I encountered some more Amazy Daisies, and with a power lift into a stampede, I was even able to kill 2 of them at once to get 100 star points from a single battle. And so, once I got to floor 99, I poured over my stats and figured out my badge loadout. I had been sitting on 50 HP and 30 FP for a while and didn't really feel like I needed any more, so I had put a ton of levels into badge power instead. I ended up having enough to equip all of my power increase badges, power bounce, quick change, peekaboo, and even lucky day, and 4 pretty luckies / pretty lucky peas. The evasion honestly isn't even that important, but I had badge points to spare, so why not, I guess? So now, let's head into Whacka. The way that this sequence is executed is honestly flawless. I love that you don't see anything when you return to the 100th floor until you walk into the center of the room and this little blue Diglett pops out of the ground. He's somehow both incredibly menacing and adorable at the same time. His dialogue is so nonchalant, and the fact that Goombella has a pretty standard tattle for him is even better. But then, after whacking him, he challenges us to a true test of strength. His battle theme is also incredible, being such a seamless blend of an intense orchestral JRPG theme and a silly, goofy, dinky little song. Honestly, unlike Prince Mush, I didn't really go into this fight with some big, grand plan or strategy. Whacka is more straightforward than Mush in the sense that he doesn't have any phases, he doesn't need to be super guarded to be fully vulnerable, and he doesn't have the stance mechanic or anything. He just spawns a dickload of Whacka bumps and throws them at you endlessly. And of course, me being me, I decided to just use Power Lift because the defense buffs would help me a lot in addition to the attack increases. And after doing that, I immediately went for a multi-bonk. These multi-hit moves are obviously not ideal since each hit spawns a Whacka bump that he can throw at you or heal with, but it's really the only way to deal serious damage in this game. I actually got one of my best multi-bonks so far in the remake and spawned a ton of Whacka bumps, and then he immediately ate a red one, healing off all the damage I just dealt to him. I hit him with a power bounce and another multi-bonk, which filled out his inventory of Whacka bumps completely, yet again. He did take some good damage, but unfortunately this turn he decided to attack me. Now the reason that Whacka having a lot of bumps is so bad is that if he chooses to attack, he'll throw every single bump he has at you in quick succession. The regular bumps deal 10 damage each, and the red ones deal an absolutely hideous, eye-watering 25 damage. I don't have much practice super guarding these attacks, so he absolutely unloaded on Goombella, with me only managing to block the big red Whacka bump. The nice thing about Whacka though is that when he attacks a character, he'll only target that character for the entire turn. So while he did completely roll Goombella, Mario is still at full health and is able to swap her out with quick change and still attack. Since Whacka didn't heal on the last turn and I was still buffed, I was able to finish him off with one more power bounce. Now honestly, this fight was not that much harder than it was when I completed it in the post game, but to be fair, pre-chapter 6 is still fairly late into the game. If I had gotten unlucky and Whacka targeted Mario, it's possible that he would have been killed, but that could be mitigated as a concern if you chose to carry a life mushroom or two. I just forgot. The strat I went for was a bit of a loose cannon method, but I still think it was fairly effective. If you wanted to play really safe, you could use charge badges instead. This would allow you to repeatedly charge up for a one-hit kill while Whacka can't really do much to you. He does have a move that allows him to spawn his own Whacka bumps, but he would be so slowed down by us not spawning them for him that it really wouldn't be very threatening. So, out of the hierarchy of early super boss challenges, I'd say that Whacka ranks as the easiest, with Prince Mush second and Bonetail first. Whacka is a lot more time consuming than Mush since you have to clear 150 trials and beat Bonetail just to unlock him, but Mush on his own is a stronger competitor. And then, obviously, Bonetail is way harder to fight during Chapter 1 than either Whacka or Mush is in the middle of the game. And so, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video even though it's a little bit shorter than my usual videos. I've been in the process of moving this week and just needed a shorter video to work on so that I could still get out something this week. As usual, massive thanks to all of the Bringle channel members for continuing to support my videos. Some of the older ones have been pledged for over 4 months now, which is awesome and incredibly humbling. If you want to join their ranks, then make sure you hit the big blue join button on my channel page. You'll be on these end screens and you'll get early access to new videos. Beyond that, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment if you want to help grow my channel in the algorithm, but most importantly, take care of yourselves, guys.